Jake's POV. Without warning, the area around me in the dream shifted like a hayseed over pavement, and I became aware of the passage of time. I somehow knew nearly a year had passed, maybe longer. Now we were in a coliseum of sorts, and Asia's darkly scaled head hung over and behind me, watching as Zachariah performed a spell. A small purple fire formed on the ground in front of Zachariah as the two looked on. "You are improving. Your speed increases with each lesson, but let us see if it was successful," Deja said, and formed a ball with his own magic. He floated it into the fire, left it for a moment, then slowly brought it out. I expected it to be smaller, but instead it had grown in size, and was completely frozen solid. "Excellent work. I say you've mastered this technique. Your understanding of negative ether is impressive for only studying it for a single year, and it only took you a matter of months to learn the inversion method unique to negative mages."
"A student is only as good as his teacher. Thank you, Deja," Zachariah said.
Deja dropped the ball of ice to the ground, shattering it to pieces. The purple flames that Zachariah had been controlling slowly died down, turning a normal orange and yellow until finally snuffing itself out. "Zachariah, may I ask you a question?" Deja asked, laying on the ground in front of Zachariah. In a way, he looked like a lion on the savannah in some old documentary or Disney movie. Despite laying down, his head still towered over me, or Zachariah technically.
"What weighs on your mind?"
Zachariah asked, looking up at the dragon's head. "What is your opinion of Hashem?"
"He reminds me of my Jarl, Sten, the leader of my people, Clan Hrafnbjorn."
"In what way?"
"He is a dragon of hairy words and mighty ideals, but not one of swift action."
Deja nodded his head. "I find myself agreeing with that."
"But you didn't ask me because you wanted to hear my opinion," Zachariah said, putting his hands on his axe hilts, which hung on his hips.
"Did I not?" Deja said, cocking his head.
"No. You asked me because you wanted to tell me your opinion of him."
Deja chuckled. "Perhaps I did."
"So, what is your opinion of Hashem?"
Deja inhaled deeply. "He is too sentimental. It has held us back."
"In what way?"
"Our people should have left this world centuries ago, but Hashem's sentimentality for these Nume has kept us here."
"Is it wrong to love this place, these people? This land is full of life. Why leave?"
"It is not wrong to love life, but..." Deja swung his massive head to the side, and looked at the mountains in the distance. "I would hardly call this place alive."
"I'm afraid I don't understand. What do you mean?"
"This world, it has grass and trees, and beings to eat them, but they are mere facsimiles of life." Zachariah looked around.
"It all looks real enough to me."
"Tell me, Zachariah, do your people have the ability to sense ether?" Deja asked, looking down on Zachariah.
"No, although I am aware it is possible for the Nume."
"We dragons are also able to sense the ether, far more so than them, and this world feels like the drifts of deserts to me." Deja moved his head closer to Zachariah. You are alive with ether. It pours off of you, like it should pour off of all truly living beings. The Numes, however, they are like wisps or bones, left to dry out in arid sands. The world you came from, Zachariah, it must have been so full of ether, so full of beauty."
"Aye, it was beautiful. But I had never seen magic like this world has while I was there," Zachariah said. "And to me, this world looks just as majestic."
Deja snorted in response. "You should have seen this world when we first found it. It was a barren wasteland. We made it what it is today."
"If you made this world, then why do you hate it?"
"I do not hate it. I feel no more for it than you would feel for one of those axes you craft. This world was an interesting experiment, but it is one that should have ended by now."
"If you feel so strongly, then why not speak with Hashem? Surely he would hear you," Zachariah said.
"He would let me go. I am no one's captive here. However, he and all those loyal to him would stay, which would be most of the dragons."
"Are there no more dragons out there?"
"There are, but just as you have your clan, I have mine."
"So, you do not wish to leave your people, but you can't stay here any longer.
Why not take the others who feel as you do and go home? Wait for the rest of your people to join you there. If we go home without Hashem, we may never find our way there. Only the Hashem knows the way.
I see, Zachariah said.
As I watched this conversation, the haze reformed around me, and the memory shifted away again. Dang it, I thought. That was getting interesting. When the haze finally disappeared, I was in a new memory, and I think it was several years in the future from the last one. It was dark, and I could smell the sea. I was in a wooden room, slowly moving up and down. Am I in a boat? Zachariah was lying on a mat on the floor, but eventually he stood up and walked outside. There was no door. Instead, there was simply a circular opening large enough for the Nume to fly through. But for Zachariah, it was a bit of a squeeze. Leaving the sleeping Nume, Zachariah went to the top deck of the ship. I hadn't heard it before, but as we got closer to the deck, I heard the sounds of rain. I readied myself to get wet, but it was pointless. The rain wasn't hitting the ship. Small glowing runes on the floor were projecting a bubble that deflected the rain. Inside that bubble, Nume flew around hurriedly, each to do some task. Zachariah, what are you still doing up? Couldn't sleep? A voice from above him called out. He turned and saw it was Ambos, who softly landed on a pile of wooden boards left on the deck.
I'm afraid not. My mind is racing with what's ahead, Zachariah said, leaning over the side of the ship.
He stuck his hand outside the barrier and let the cold rain pour over his arm.
Hashem, dead. It almost seemed impossible.
I do not wish to believe it myself, but the messenger was clear.
Why would Deja do this? I know he and Hashem held their differences, but to kill one Jal, his friend, I do not understand.
Of all the dragons, Deja is the most incomprehensible.
I feel as if this were somehow my fault, that if I had given him better advice, or I do not know.
Deja's actions, while villainous, were his own. You supported him as best as you could. You must not take responsibility for his deeds.
My mind knows this, but my heart does not believe it.
Zachariah shook his head, and pulled his hand back from the rain.